not queen takes b3, rook takes b3 in that particular game. But as we know, you've got to put all of those things that happened before out of your mind and just focus at the mission at hand.
Wesley could have not won this tournament clear if he had maybe lost the game to a Kobe and not won that game against Ornischuk. Ornischuk himself, if he just one more half point somewhere and he's a clear winner, he's truly deserving of this position he's in right now.
No Absolutely. That's right.
No question about it.
He had a good game against Wesley. He won some nice games with White, destroying the Grunfeld.
Yes.
Don't play the Grunfeld against Alex, guys.
He was definitely the Grunfeld killer. There you go. The players have shook hands, and the clock has started. Looks like English.
That's
C4.
right. So he played knight f3 in his game here against Alex, but that ended up transposing to Catalan anyway. Is this going to go along the same lines as?
It looks like a Nimzo move order,
You
allowing the
play
move
E4
e2, e4, which Wesley did essay, and very quickly came the move d7, d5, captures.
Note the difference in time, the time control, not only the 25 minutes, but the delay. And so you see the clock frozen for 5 seconds before it ticks down.
That's right. So nobody can gain time. They can just not lose time.
Exactly. No increment.
And here we have the reason that a lot of players don't play this move order is they find this line dangerous for White. What do you think, Yaz? Do you find this line dangerous for White as well?
Yes. No. I mean, dangerous for Black. I like.
That's what I meant.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I like White's position, and the games practice has shown that the results are quite favorable for White. So this move order with e6 and knight f6, just a little bit nervy here. Not that Black has a bad game or anything like that. It's but Wesley will certainly be happy that he gets such an unbalanced position. By the way, this last move, knight f3, sets up for a trap. You don't want to play bishop e7 because we've seen this tactic across so many variations. Queen a4 check, picks up this pawn on e4, and White pockets a pawn. The normal move, as far as I know, is knight c6. And let's see what he played instead.
He's played bishop f5, it looks like.
Bishop
I'm more
f5.
familiar with the lines that we're instead on after 5 e5, Black plays d4.
Exactly.
By the way, Wesley played exactly this line against Hikaru Nakamura in their blitz matchup in Leuven on the Grand Chess Tour, and Nakamura did play bishop to f5. Wesley did go on to win that game, so we are following that pretty important game right now.
And how did Wesley continue in that game, Maurice?
After bishop f5, he played the move d4.
All right.
And then bishop b4, bishop d2, bishop takes c3, bishop takes e3, castles, bishop e2, just traditional opening moves.
I see. Bishop take. So, again, you are mentioning that on the Grand Chess Tour, Wesley had the white side of this exact position against Hikaru Nakamura and apparently won.
And now he's changed up with bishop to e2. The actual,
immediately.
Right. Instead of playing d4, this time he played the move bishop to e2, opting to, I guess, sidestep preparation because he figures his opponent probably did look at that Nakamura game.
Well, the nice thing I like about the move bishop e2, it gives White an option, depending on what Black's setup is, to play the move d2, d3, and rather force a trade on the c3 square. Bishop e7, we're going to be expecting castles now by Wesley. Again, tucking in your king. Very important, of course, king safety.
Both played.
And indeed, castles has also been played now by Alexander Ornischuk. Here, the move that kind of is attracting my eye is a move like queen b3. Queen b3 has a double purpose, of course. I'm always looking for grabbing a pawn. If my opponent has allowed such a double attacking opportunity, this could be met with knight takes c3, but I'm thinking that after knight takes c3, d takes c3, excuse me, this bishop on c1 is suddenly, its diagonal is open, and this pawn on d5 as well as the pawn on b7 could fall under attack. But queen b3 might give an opportunity for Black to do something himself.
More aggressive. You're trying to find a way to play like knight c6 and knight b4, perhaps.
Yeah, knight c5, queen takes d5, something sinks on d3. Doesn't look like it'll be full compensation. Maurice, what about this move?
Well, we can play
b3?
knight c3 after knight c6, queen d5. There is knight c3 there.
Right.
So e2 hangs in the end of the variation, right?
Yeah. So I'll have to take with the knight. Maurice.
Yeah.
Well, the Indians feel that queen b3 can be met by d4 in this position. Very aggressive move right away. Obviously, if you take the knight, then the bishop captures and guards the b7 pawn. And the Indians are ready to sacrifice an exchange after d4. Queen takes b7, d takes on c3. And if you capture this piece, c takes d2, and there's some action happening on the square. But as they're analyzing, they're saying that this looks like it might end up being better for white in the long run after rook d1, maybe only slightly better for white. Now, an extremely complex position as now the Indians are considering moves like g4 to really complicate the game. Take a look at that position. How often do you see a queen on a8, pawn on g4, pawn on d2, and we've only played 12 moves? That would be original country. But I would also point out in the board position that we have now, the move order with bishop to e2, no one has ever played bishop to e7 in response. After bishop e2, knight c6 has been played, and c5 has been played, c6 as well, I believe, but not bishop e7. So as I'm looking at this position, because the pawn is not yet on d4, we haven't transposed into other lines as yet that you could get into. But this one looks like it's original. They're playing an original position on the board. Neither side could have prepared this line at all. So out of the opening, I don't know whose advantage it is to be in this type of position, but clearly Wesley is not out-prepared his opponent. He's now stopping to think, how should I proceed in what is a new position to professional chess?
And he's certainly calculating those lines you're mentioning, as well as Alex, as Wesley goes into the tank for the first time in the game.
Exactly. Now the question, Maurice, is in that line where you did play, where we did follow that exchange sacrifice, queen b3, very enterprising play by black. This move d5, d4, queen takes b7, going after the rook. Stuck in the corner. Queen takes a8.
And there it is, queen b3.
Queen b3. You were mentioning this capture on d2, followed by this very, very crazy g2, g4 move. I don't like weakening my king's position, but I'm thinking, can't I play knight takes d2, followed by knight takes d2, rook d1, trying to take advantage of this pin along the d file? How do the engines reckon on this?
Pure defense. Pure defense, play bishop to g5.
Wow.
And, I mean, you just never seen positions like this. It's just so weird. But bishop g5, and
if I take on d2?
If you take on d2, then you have to take back on d2. The threat is now bishop to c2.
And I'm thinking, so I've grabbed a couple of pawns for the two pieces, as well as the exchange, but I can't attack this bishop on d2 in a nice way, can I?
Not really, and something like rook to c1 to try to get your rook off this line can be met by bishop takes c1 and rook takes, and now rook takes d8, and the engine's like black here with the extra piece, a rook, bishop, and knight against queen. So pretty wild line. It's hypercritical. This is the critical move, and Wesley decided to go for it as a possible opportunity for himself. The line is crazy. d4, queen b7, dx c3, queen takes a8. I have a feeling that Alex is going to judge this pawn the way you have judged it, Yaz, as something not worth it's the effort putting it there. You're going to drop an exchange, and the point is that, like you said, after knight takes d2, and then rook d1, this is not a well-posted knight. It's not one of those, my knight looks good, what are you going to do about it? It's a pin knight that might die. If he starts to look at these lines, he might feel very uncomfortable. And the inches are actually giving white a slight edge if white gets this pawn as well, even if white never gets this piece. Let's go down this line again. Bishop to g5, queen takes a7, bishop to c2, chasing the rook. And the engines give bishop d2, and actually rook f1 he doesn't want to play. He wants to play queen c5 of all moves in this position. Again, maintaining the pin after rook takes d1. This bishop looks like it's not long for the world, in fact, in this position. So it doesn't look attractive getting the pawn to d2. It's one thing you're giving up the exchange if you're getting a couple of pieces straight with your pawn. But if it's not a healthy two pieces, this could be a very problematic line to play for black. And if he's calculating these variations, I think he's going to burn a lot of clock to try to decide if d5 is actually worth it.
And the other
Well,
option
a very
is this.
critical moment then here. That's why he's burning clock.
Yeah, it
because
makes sense.
Both players recognize that these sharp lines that they have to calculate all the way to the end, they're not going to have a lot of, they don't have much time, so they just have to play by their intuition.
And what's wrong with knight c6 again? You were going to take b7, or you were going to take d5?
In case of the immediate knight c6, I was going to take the pawn on d5 with knight takes d5. I'm aiming to capture the bishop on e7, so you can't play knight a5 and mess me up with your... Well, you can play knight a5, but I'm not tethered to this knight. Don't have to make a queen move. Rather, I can get rid of my knight, and then, you know, I stole a pawn, essentially, is how this line would go. So I don't think knight c6 is actually playable. I think Alex may actually have no choice. He may have to simply play d4.
Because knight c3 looks really unpleasant. But after knight c6, knight d5, is there also knight c5?
I still want to give up this pawn. I still want to take it.
Well,
Together,
and
we will get up. What do you
Queen
think?
a3 right now?
I was
Queen
trying to hit
a3.
e5. Is the idea.
Yeah, no, I was
But-
going to slide over to e3 because I was thinking that if I could just simply play d4, well, that's all she wrote. I got in, I win a pawn.
Queen a3 also looks
Queen a3
strong. No,
looks
knight takes
scrumptious.
e5. I played d4 anyway.
Ah, this is a very nice pin. Yes, Maurice, very nice. You just mentioned that knight takes e5, d4, and knight f3 just loses to bishop f3, and this pin is fatal.
Let us take a look, although there maybe knight c6. Anyway, that's crazy. Want to see another crazy line? Sure. In this position, the move knight to c5. Knight c5. The pawn is under attack, all right? You're going to take it?
Yep.
And now queen c8. And bizarro, this queen is trapped, or looking very trapped, looking close to being trapped anyway. Very uncomfortable queen in this position. What do you play to extricate your queen? It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Also, rook d8 and planting a piece on d3 is possible. Let's say you play a move like d4, suddenly bishop to e6, and you see the point. The queen has nowhere to go. The queen is just simply trapped in the middle of the board. So d4 is not possible, so you have to back out, but you can't hide from queen b3. A move like queen c4, the Indians give the option of playing d4. And this is where I'm suspicious of the sacrifice, is this move c6 is the best move according to the Indians. Still harping on the fact that your queen has very limited squares having entered black's position. The queen has d4, it has f4, b4 looks dangerous. d4, of course, rook d8. f4 is possible, but it's not gaining a tempo on this piece, and something's going to land on d3 as well. If you play d4 now, well, once again, b5 was the threat of c6, and suddenly, where does your queen go? Your queen has no moves. Queen b4, of course, the only place to go, and now a5, and suddenly it is black that's completely winning in this position. So is it possible? This is like some serious Aikido chess going on here. You draw the person in, suddenly make a sidestep, and they're looking at it like, I grabbed the stuff, but, oh, I'm too far in. Is this a possible line? He's going to have to calculate. He's going to sacrifice the D pawn. It's not the one you really want to take, but burning a lot of clock is Ornischuk right now. That might be the most critical of everything that is happening right now. The fact that he has met this critical move, and he's already at 16, maybe 17, but knight c5 would be a wonderful move if he can judge that queen d5 is dynamic for black. Because if knight c5 goes on the board and the queen has to back up, suddenly it's black that takes over the game because he has the d4 threats, and white's last threat was not a good idea.
Wow, very, very sharp, complex line. I'm looking at another line after that queen c8 sidestep move that you mentioned. Maurice, knight c5, queen takes d5, queen c6. I'm looking at this
Queen
line.
c8.
Pardon me, queen c8, queen d4, rook d8, queen e3, knight d3. Very complicated line. Knight d4, attacking the bishop, attacking the knight on d3, trying to provoke a knight takes c1 kind of capture. I got this cute little trick that in case of bishop c5 pinning me, I still have knight takes f5 because check this out. I got a family fork, a royal fork on the e7 square.
So I have to go queen f5.
Queen takes f5, but now I've got bishop takes d3, and the bishop on c5 is hanging. The problem I had with queen d4, by the way, was not rook d8 in this position, but actually knight c6, attacking the queen, forcing me to back up to the square I wanted to back up to, that is to say the e3 square. I'm eyeballing the opportunity of playing d4, but I'm looking at this move, knight b4, threatening a different fork, this time on the c2 square, and this looks like full compensation.
And now knight d4.
Fortunately, he played knight c6.
He played knight c6.
So he played this move, knight c6, which is so forcing. So it was one of the first moves we looked at. The idea being that after queen takes d5, there's a simple tactic
of knight takes
c3, and now after queen takes d8, there's an in-between move. So black just wins here.
That Zug, knight takes e2 would be fatal. Yep.
So instead, we were looking at knight takes d5, and Ornischuk probably trying to figure out a way to destabilize the queen on b3. But as you pointed out, knight takes e7 check comes with tempo.
Exactly.
So it was hard for us to do that. If we tried bishop e6, you take with check. We try knight c5, you take with check, and play queen e3, and we were having trouble finding sufficient counterplay here.
Very fascinating moment in the game.
Bishop c5.
And I don't know if he's planned it, but knight takes d5 can be responded to by the ultra unusual knight g5. Take a look at this line, knight to g5, and it looks like Wesley wants to take knight g5, trying to undermine this knight on f3 and win this pawn on e5. Very bizarre looking move in this position, but the inches are saying that black's only slightly worse in a very long trade line that runs knight takes e7, queen takes on e7, knight takes g5, queen takes g5, d4, hitting the queen, and now this retreat, queen d8, and the engines give as best to try to get an edge. Bishop to e3, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen takes e4, queen takes on b7, and now queen takes e5. If black gets out of it with this, black's going to feel like he survived the ultimate worst because he could be dead. And knight takes d5 has been played. It is on the board right now. This is the most critical line. I'm just like looking for all my moves. I'm
That's
just
right. Wesley
refresh the board right here.
Snacked on the pawn, and now Alexander Ornischuk's deep tank. Has he come up with a concrete variation here?
Knight g5 is his only real choice. Everything else seems to be down, basically a full pawn.
Well, it's interesting the move knight g5 because we keep trying to play this move d4. So knight g5 removes the defender of the d4 square, and immediately knight takes f3 and knight d4 is threatened. So definitely a very logical move.
But knight g5 seems so counterintuitive for me. I'm sitting there saying this knight on e4, I mean, if this was a blitz game, not a rapid chess, bishop c5 would be my move.
And that's happened.
Because
threatening bishop e6.
Right, but now, well, it's getting very complex because there's knight a5 ideas to attack the white queen that defends the knight on d5. Big moment here. Should Wesley play knight e3 or bringing back his knight, avoiding a lot of tactical skirmishes, or should he play the ultra aggressive d2, d3, trapping black's knight in the middle of the board?
And now knight takes f2 is Alex's idea, with the idea.
Knight f2, knight a5, knight a5.
What's crazy about this position is, and he found the move, that was his only move to not be worse, according to the
bishop
engines.
c5.
After bishop c5, knight e3 was best by a long shot. Everything else was supposed to be worse for him, and he found it. Kudos to him for finding this move. Knight back, and now bishop back to g6 has been played. The danger in this line is suddenly your pieces are going to get run back with d3, and the knight, guess what, is going to end up at g5 anyway. There's no place to put it.
Exactly.
Excuse me, that was an accident. This move is the only move. There's no place else to put this knight. You've got to go here and only here, and now the engines are being ultra greedy and insisting, by the way, that this is the only move again to keep an edge. That's crazy. The only move to keep an edge. Queen takes on b7 now, causing disruption in black's camp and saying, I got the pawns. Show me why this is not any good. He's up a pawn in this position. The best line, knight to d4, seeking activity after takes, and a pawn up with knight c4 is the move, consolidating the pawn advantage. Currently, actually, he's up 2 pawns in this position. There is some counterplay for black, but it's critical already for Ornischuk coming right out of the opening. The knight c6 move, it looks like he didn't anticipate knight takes on d5, but there is going to be some defensive task ahead for Wesley. We can expect some mistakes, small errors to creep in. Maybe Ornischuk does have a puncher's chance. He decided, I'd rather have coordinated pieces and activity going down material if he's going to miss a move like queen b3.
Wow.
I mean, look at the board. It's really a great picture. 4 minor pieces for black in the game. White has 3 minor pieces in the game, but none of them pass the 3rd rank, and a knight on e3 looking very unusual, a bishop on c1. You might judge this as compensation for black if you just quickly look at the board and say, well, this doesn't look that bad.
Or you might not think you have much of a choice if you don't see this idea of knight g5. I think Alex just didn't want to...
knight g5 move, yeah?
Yeah, I think his idea of the tame variation was knight takes c3, and that just looked too unpleasant.
Yes, it did, didn't it? It just didn't feel right. It was so helpful for White's position.
So he's just like gamble or just go down is his idea.
Yeah, but look at this position. I mean, you have to look at it a little bit at least to know that White's just winning or much better. Up a pawn. By the way, it's not as though White is winning because the position is overwhelming in any way. It's just the material. I've got it, and I'm going to now consolidate. It takes time to consolidate. Consolidation is a hard thing to do in chess.
And no increment. This is delay.
No increment, right. So for black, this position is easy to play. Right. He's just going to keep pushing pieces forward. Right. For White, he's got to say, okay, I got to get rid of these suckers. These guys are bothering me. And I've got to get my pieces out. Once White's pieces get in the game, that's all she wrote. Right. But it's a long way to Tipperary. We'll see whether or not, with this big thing that Wesley So is doing, can he get there?
One of the things, what I would imagine Wesley is thinking about, again, being very greedily minded. Let's imagine move d3 for a second, right? Okay, you got to play knight g5. I'm going to play knight takes g5, queen takes g5, not the queen takes b7, ultra greed of grabbing the 2 pawns. But Wesley might say, hey, look what I've done with the move f2, f4. Of course, I'm taking big risks. I'm leaving my knight on e3 in a nasty pin. I've given up the d4 square. But if I could get my pawn to f5, I'm going to grab a piece. It looks very, very. I wouldn't go for this line myself. It looks very, very dubious to me.
So queen h6. At least we're continuing to keep the pressure on the e3 knight, and knight takes e5 is a possible threat.
Well, queen h6. Yes, I understand what you're saying. I can't play the desirable f5 because you got e3 on tap.
And if king h1, I could look at knight takes e5.
That was the move I wanted to play, king h1.
And you wanted me to play knight takes e5.
I'm not sure I wanted you to play knight takes e5.
Knight takes e5, I'm just trying to win back a pawn.
My goal was to play knight g4 and trap your queen, so knight e5 is probably a very good idea, except I've got a trick. Notice that you're attacking my knight on e3, but my queen could potentially...
Start with d4.
Right, with the idea of takes, and I have won a piece in this particular line.
Wesley has snatched the pawn.
Played.
He's played queen takes b7.
Yes, indeed.
More snacks.
But this
line... Without playing first d2, d3.
Without playing d3, the engines don't believe this line. They think that this position is only slightly worse for black. And when you're down 2 pawns, or I should say you're up 2 pawns against an engine, when you're up 2 pawns and the engines, who are very materialistic, say, I don't know, it doesn't look like you have 2 real pawns. That's not a good sign. That means you're going to have to come up with some serious tactics in order to justify this. The engines give the very straightforward knight to d4, hitting this bishop on e2. If you now play knight takes, I want to play bishop takes on d4 and d3, and then this move, knight c5, and we're discussing the position of this queen yet again. Also, this pawn on e5 is under threat. Also, this pawn on b2. It's not going to be easy to develop his pieces. Wesley has not played the optimal line. In this case, this line with knight d4, that's what we were saying about black's position. Keep sending the pieces down the board. Just don't worry about it. Keep going forward and make sure he cannot consolidate with d4. d4 happens, you could be dead lost if it's stable. But just now you look at this position and you can see it's very clear that white does not dominate the board at all, and black is starting to get some compensation. He needs, though, to find the move first, knight to d4.
It's extraordinary to my mind that Wesley did not flick in that move d2, d3, because essentially this knight on e4 is well posted. There's no question. This is a great knight in the center of the board. Lots of threats being generated by this knight. You want to get rid of this knight.
Right, before we have more options, like for instance, if we later are able to play knight c5 instead of having to shoot it out to g5, that would be a gain.
Yes, as Maurice has shown that, okay, first let's put the knight on the flank, force it out of the center, knight g5, then let's snack on the pawn on b7. Snacking immediately, as Maurice points out.
And he's found it.
Knight d4, and it's a force majeure for white. He has to capture on d4.
Actually, he could have played bishop d1 was the Indian's top choice.
No kidding.
To knight d4, yes. Or knight d4 was not the automatic move. Bishop d1, now they're going back and forth between queen a6, bishop d1, and potentially knight d4. It looks like over some time it's now settling on knight d4 and all the variations. Now we just switch back to knight a6, queen a6, just before I play this move, knight takes d4. The key move here, though, is not to take with the queen. The key move is to take with the bishop.
Right.
Now, it looks as though he could try to get out with this move, queen to d5, bishop takes e3, however, attacks his queen, and now queen takes d8, bishop takes f2, check in the midst of it, rook takes, and now rook takes on d8. This position, you can't push this pawn. You do have the two bishops, but it's hard. Well, the reality is you're about to drop this pawn as well. The Indians actually don't even want the pawn. Black has full activity in this position. We talked about this. It's very hard. One of the hardest things to do in chess is to consolidate gains. And now we see the variation. D3 on the board. Knight c5 will come. It's very hard to consolidate your gains in chess. One of the most difficult things to do. You win material. I'm up. Now you've got to beat back all the counterplay. Wesley has not played in the most accurate way. I don't know why he's not playing knight c5 here immediately, Alex. He's going to have to save time on the clock, as that's going to be a factor as well. But Wesley didn't play the most accurate way, and now black has real compensation.
Let's go through this compensation, because d3 knight c5 is what we would expect, and we would expect since white's queen is attacked, as well as the pawn on d3.
So you don't want to play queen d5 because of bishop takes e3?
Because I just don't like that variation that Maurice just showed. And queen b5 came very quickly. I'm defending the pawn on d3. Now, from white's point of view, good news is you can't take this pawn immediately because the knight on c5 is hanging. You've got to come up with a good move for black here. Rook e8, queen e7.
Rook b8. Look at this.
Rook b8.
This is great compensation for black, this position. Rook b8.
Remember, it's two pawns, Maurice.
Yes, agreed, but after rook to b8.
Queen c4.
Queen c4. Now the move, let me just get this in. Queen c4, knight e6 was the move. The Indians game, knight e6.
Knight e6. Okay, I didn't consider that. All right, go on.
And the point is, the knight can go to f4 in some positions. This pin is here, so you're not getting anything on this side. The b2 pawn is hanging. Obviously, it's not concrete. This is a mess.
This will be a fun one. But
did he play it?
Knight e6 just releases.
He did play rook b8.
But the knight e6 just releases the bishop to be able to take on e5. So it's not that illogical of a move.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. The e5 pawn is hanging. If he finds knight e6, he will be perfectly coordinated. And the Indians are giving white 0 edge, up 2 pawns. No edge at all after the move knight e6. Ornischuk will have played brilliantly with the black pieces to stave off what was a greedy Wesley So in this game. Right. He's still down 2 pawns, but after knight e6, the Indians love his chances.
What other moves could he be considering here? What about the move, another natural move?
The most natural move for me is rook e8.
Rook e8?
Yeah, rook f8, e8, just trying to take that pawn back and say, I like my pieces on d4 and c5. Knight e6 is voluntary retreat.
And what about your greedy move from before f4?
Ooh.
Do you have an f6 there?
I'm not sure.
No,
well, first of all,
your queen's on c4 now,
yes,
right?
Queen c4.
He moved, yeah.
So if rook e8, f4, is that
he's played knight e6.
All right.
This guy, he's in such great form this tournament. He's finding all the moves. Boss chess right now.
But he's got a huge time disadvantage still.
Does he?
9 minutes to over 14 for Wesley. And, of course, we know that Alex Ornischuk's students at Texas Tech are cheering him on right now. He's the underdog story. But Will he get it done in this position? We certainly have the exciting position to watch him try.
Absolutely. Well, here we go. Knight e6 is basically saying to white, look, I just want to recapture the material I sacrificed. Bishop takes e5, and bishop takes b2 is on black's agenda. And this move, knight e6 to f4 is particularly problematic because once the knight lands on f4, you do not want to lose your light squared bishop and watch your d3 pawn get lopped off. Things could go south in a real hurry for white. White has to be careful here.
Yes, white has to be really careful. And f4 is F4 is the engine's move. F4, I don't imagine. I'm thinking of this position. F4, believe it or not, the sharpest move after f4, c5. Just cementing this bishop on d4 because of long-range tactics, which will not be easy to see. The point being that after f5, now this bishop is trapped, you play the move queen g5, and your queen is now no longer, and f4 has been played, your queen no longer has to worry about this piece, and the knight is hanging on e3. The engines give f e6, and the knight as the right move. Bishop takes, now king to h1, and now queen takes on e5, and saying that there is no edge for white at all. The b2 pawn is a problem. Anytime you trade, that's not a problem. This capture here means nothing after bishop takes f7. Black is perfectly coordinated, and white still hasn't really developed his pieces. It's all about dynamics right now. Can he find these moves? c5 is the next best move. That's the hardest move of all the moves, I think, so far, is just to wait and let the guy drop f5 on you. He can also play the move bishop takes on b2. The engines only give white a slight edge here as well, saying you have to take on this square. Why? Rook b1 is met by knight d4 with great activity. This looks logical to actually play. If you're Ornischuk, this is saying, the engines say this is fine for black now. So bishop takes b2, bishop takes, and now rook takes b2. And you can see the activity in black's position. A knight can go to d4. You have to play knight c2 to keep him off of you. Not as impressive a line, though, when you look at this position. Not easy to see what's going to happen next. Every move, I'm impressed by how black has handled himself. Unfortunately, it's a rapid game. If it was over the board, it'd be predictable that he'll find some of these strong moves. But a rapid game to finally judge it and to be down this much on the clock?
2-to-1 edge.
With no increment.
For Wesley,
no
the clock.
Increment.
You can certainly sympathize with Ornischuk. I mean, it's such a critical decision here to play bishop takes b2.
I feel like every decision he's made in the last 6-7 moves has been critical, like every single one. This knight e6 for move, knight c6.
And there it goes. He's taking the pawn on b2.
One guy back. That's just natural.
Yes.
But it's hard to make just one more waiting move with c5. Just one more. But you'd have to see through all the threats of f5. You have to see all the complications.
Right.
This is the most practical decision by far.
If bishop takes b2 wasn't in the position, then he'd find c5 because it just improves your position.
Indeed. And you cement the bishop and you start generating those threats after f5 with queen g5 that Marisa mentioned. Well, this all looks forced.
Yeah, once there's a concrete line in the position, especially in rapid and blitz, Alex can't help but analyze it, and if he thinks it's sufficient at the end, he's going to play it. It's like he can't sit there and think and let his clock tick down to 5 minutes. That would just be suicide.
But now, he played rook b1. He played rook b1. That's the first slip. Rook but you know what? Even bishop takes b2. This line here, just following real quick. In this position, rook takes c2 combination. Rook takes c2, queen takes c2, knight d4, move your queen to defend your bishop. Knight takes on e2 check, queen takes, bishop takes d3, winning back everything. You're going to take your rook now, and this is slightly only minuscule worse for black. You should not lose this position. Queen to d4 was what?
Queen
d4 just got played.
Well, after bishop takes b2, a slip by Wesley, this move rook b1. I didn't like that move rook b1, and because of the move knight d4, as you mentioned, Marisa, knights would be on a fantastic square on d4, hitting the bishop, which is protecting the d3 pawn. But queen d4. By
the way, knight d4 almost forces a draw. Follow that line again, backing up. Please. Knight d4. The engines give rook takes on b2, takes. This is apparently best, takes, knight takes check, king to h1. King f2 looks like it's something to analyze, but queen h4, not bishop d3, queen h4 in this position with a huge knight g3 check threat in the position as well. And because of this, you have to bail and allow a perpet, according to the Indians, with knight g3, knight e2. That was purportedly the best line to go for in this position. But that's all just tactics and hard to see and millions of calculations per second. Queen d4, white does have a way of bailing out by the position is to trade queens down. Queen takes on d4, this move, and after bishop takes to go into the end game. But this is looking suspicious. King h1, this is the key move. King h1 now looking for f5. He's still up a pawn, and black has no easy entries. And bishop takes e3 looks like the only. I would not want to play that move. Bishop takes e3, bishop takes e3, rook down to b2, looking for some kind of compensation. But now it's getting a little messy. Is it enough? Man, this is just wild, this game. Incredible game. Just in the short term that it's been played so far, the complications have been crazy to judge.
So yeah, that line that Maurice was just mentioning after queen d4, bishop d4, rook b8, instead of king h1, so after f5, you're talking about bishop f5 and rook b1. So yeah, I just thought we could go over that because it's kind of cool. And now if rook comes back to f1, there's the whole rook takes c1.
Routine.
Yeah.
Oops.
And now we've recovered
everything.
Pawn, yeah. And one of
the extra piece.
Yeah. So instead he'd have to like bail out somewhere there. So this move king h1 is
setting up that f4 f5 attack. Bishop takes e3. I mean, you would resist playing that. I mean, it's a move you just don't want to play. Mind you, after bishop e3, rook b2, there was this move bishop f3, bishop takes d3. All three results possible, but first, you just don't want to give that bishop on d4. That looks just so sweet for that.
Well, he's already won a game, or maybe two, by showing that the two bishops can be superior by a lot to bishop and knight. So his intuition is going to tell him, I don't really want to play that move.
Now, Wesley's taken quite some time over this decision after queen d4. Does he have an option?
Whoa.
Well, he's played something else. He's played
yes, exactly.
D2. I mean,
what was he considering? Well, now we have the answer. Rook takes b2 was his idea, because after the forced rook takes b2, Wesley, what has Wesley got in mind? Queen takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes is not impressive. Wait a minute.
And if bishop takes b2, we just have queen takes e3 check.
Queen takes e3 check.
This is the main line.
And then rook f2.
Is
whoa,
forced.
Another new move. This guy is surprising on every move.
We're seeing a lot of surprise moves.
He sacked an exchange and then played bishop g4? Is that real?
Wait, he's played bishop g4 here, so he hasn't taken back on b2.
What?
He's played bishop g4.
Bishop g4?
Trying to threaten f5.
Whoa, wait a minute. Whoa.
Your spidey senses.
Yeah, no.
Everything's
Wesley,
in take here. It's just...
Yeah, Wesley may be playing with fire suddenly. What has he done this for? Oh, my goodness.
He's done an exchange right now.
Right now.
So,
for a pawn or two? Or what's... No, only for a single pawn.
For a single pawn, he sacrificed an exchange.
But this threat of f4, f5 looms large.
So if we play queen takes c4 and rook takes a2,
but remember,
there is an f5 move which ruins our fun. But even in that position, we have to look at h5, right?
Sorry, Jen. Queen takes c4, takes c4.
After rook a2, f5, h5.
Rook a, but you're still in a. It's going to be two pieces for a rook after this bishop goes somewhere. No. I don't know where. Let's just plonk it down on
But
F3.
who's better?
And now...
Yeah, you got my choice.
Hey, yeah. That's why you
have?
get paid the big bucks. Who's better?
Oh, yeah, black will only have one pawn after we take on f5 or something.
So is there a better
move for black?
Yeah, we gotta come up with something
better.
No,
but that's just... Queen b6 is supposed to be the best move, but that line itself is interesting. Queen c4 takes f5, h5. If you play bishop f3, save your bishop, bishop h7.
All right, I'll take I'll snag
and
this
take
guy.
And take. Now it's a rook and pawn for
2 pieces, Maurice.
Past a pawn. What do you got?
2 pieces, my friend.
Knight.
By the way,
knight e5. We don't have rook f3.
By the way,
we don't have
rook f3 if you play that move.
Rook f3, yeah. Because knight e7 check king f8, but we do have some
and different move altogether. Now we're having
a bad move.
We're having a
rook
real,
d4, so
real hard time guessing the moves.
That was a really bad move, rook b4.
Uh-oh.
That was a really bad move.
immediate queen takes d4 by Wesley.
Yeah, that was a mistake, and this is going to cost him.
Oh, because there's bishop a3's in the position
Yes,
now.
he misplaced his
So-
bishop.
Now, because of the threat of f4, f5, we're going to have to recapture with the knight to get out of that threat of f5.
And now there's bishop a3 on the board.
Skewering.
Are you
one
sure
of
we
the
can't
rooks.
play rook takes d4 and then after f5, like rook g4, and bail out that way? No, because there's
Sorry.
after
in
rook
this one, yes.
after rook d4,
Yes.
f5.
Yes.
At least we could play rook g4 here, and
I don't know. This looks like, and
yeah,
bishop
this is just
h5,
so-
something like this. Uh-oh,
But there's a
no.
bishop again. There's a bishop a3. So after pawn takes e6, bishop takes g4. There's bishop a3 in this position.
And that's a
Nice.
winner.
And now it takes
and
an
that's a winner.
f7. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a stone cold winner right there. You,
b4 was a mistake
Oh,
of huge
my
proportions.
goodness.
He had Wesley
This
just
was-
dragged him into the complications, and he has made a critical error. And now White is just winning.
That's very unfortunate because those lines with queen takes d4 and rook
Were
a2 were fun,
fascinating.
but they look dangerous for black too. It kind of felt like in those lines that black was the one trying to come up with weird stuff to.
That wasn't his best move though.
Win
Queen
back
b6,
material.
Queen b6, the really odd move. Just a few moves ago, if I could
Yep.
bring this up, Queen d4, Rook b2, Bishop g4. This move is what the Indians give as best in this position, dropping back. F5 now apparently loses to Rook to b4. Now your bishop on g4 is just hanging because of the pin along this long diagonal.
Exactly.
So Queen b6 had with it a preventive idea, beautiful retreating move. And if you now take the rook to keep this line going, queen takes on e3, and after king moves, then simply bishop takes d3, and you're out of the woods. Queen b6, given more time, he would have found this beautiful move, queen to b6, that shuts down everything that white had. Absolutely everything. There's nothing in this exchange sack anymore. Key moves, bishop takes or f5 would be gone. Moves like king h1 don't count because rook b4 is in the position. The pawn's hanging. This would have been fantastic for black, but he missed it in the time pressure.
But even with all these lines, I mean, the tactics are just so rife. Having only 2 or 3 minutes left on the clock, it's really tough for Alex Ornischuk without the increment, as we pointed out.
and
Even
he
with
has
the
played-
increment, the tactics are crazy.
Yeah.
By the way, rook takes d4 was played after some consideration. Alex down to 2 minutes 14 seconds.
But now just f5 on
Wesley,
the board.
Yes, f4, f5 by Wesley. So forking the minor pieces. Knight f4 by Alex. But this is all she wrote, I'm afraid. This is
Desperation.
very, very easy. Knight c2 looks like the money move here, Maurice.
Death.
Knight
c2, and you can resign right now.
and followed by bishop takes f4, and there's simply no play.
And the bishop is still trapped.
And the
on
bishop
G6
is still
with
trapped.
issues there. It's busted.
Yeah, this is it. Knight c2. Will Wesley find it? I
Yes.
say it's 100%.
Well, he's got over 8 minutes on the clock.
Right.
And this is why he saved his time. I mean, a very practical player.
Always has been. I mean, we talk about this incredible streak that he's had in classical chess, and throughout that whole streak, his objectivity, his practical approach to each game has been
There it
There
is.
it is.
noteworthy.
The backward retreating move by the knight, sometimes difficult to find, but not difficult for the world number 2 to find.
No.
With 8 minutes on the clock, just he who makes the last mistake loses the game, and that's no more true than it is in rapid chess. and blitz.
Absolutely. And this, unfortunately for Alex, he's losing too much material now. He recognizes that, oops, he did something, he erred earlier. That retreating queen b6 move, not an easy move at all to find with so many
wasn't his
pieces
only choice.
hanging.
I mean, queen c4 was also the secondary choice.
Right.
But rook to b. You know what's funny about rook to b4? Rook to b4 in that position. What's funny about it is that you are up in exchange, right?
At that exact moment. Yeah.
At this moment, you're up in exchange. So it's not as though you're going to worry about losing this rook because you're already up in exchange. So you can either trade down and rip and use the fact that you're getting stuff for the exchange in your favor, or a move like queen b6, which maintains all the delicious threats in the position with the additional idea of rook b4. If Alex had this position and you gave him 20 minutes,
No question.
queen b6, you just walk in the park
that's
for
an
him.
automatic.
No, this is not a hard move for him. But with no time on the clock, just messiness. You can't find all these moves. It's just too difficult. And unfortunately for him, Wesley, in the meantime, maneuvered through all the complications. Kudos to Wesley, the way he created instant madness with his moves. He
Bishop
played the
G4.
critical lines.
Bishop G4.
Well, also
was the
queen
first
b3, also queen takes b7.
Yep.
He said, we're going to go there. I don't know what shows up. Not a lot of people would go for the poison pawn on b7 and say, you know what, I see some complications. Let's go for it.
Yep.
Those complications at the queen b7 were actually fine for Alex.
Right.
But he had to find all the moves.
Yeah. Even so, we do have the current position after the move knight c2, winning material, rook a4. Alex has not given up on the game yet. He's still harboring some hope. He's down on a minute, and we're just expecting the simple capture. Bishop takes f4. Alex will have no choice. Try to rescue his trapped bishop on g6 with the move f5. And now here's another.
H5.
Pardon me, h5. Here I've got another funny money move for you, Maurice. Bishop d1. Attacking the bishop on f5. Preparing is really, really cute discovered attack after bishop takes f5, knight to e3, hitting both bishop on f5 as well as rook on a4.
You're guessing all the moves, Yaz,
Yeah.
and you're right on point.
Yeah.
Devastating shots.
And we have seen bishop f4, bishop d1. By the way, isn't the only move. This is simply a winning position. I'm just thinking the most precise killer shots.
Well, what have we seen? One thing about rapid is it's great to have lots of practice in rapid.
Yes.
And Wesley saw us had practice against some names like Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, Vishwanathan Anand, Vladimir Kramnik, Maxim Vachilagrov, Aronian. It goes on and on.
Magnus Carlsen.
No, Magnus was the first name I said.
Sorry.
Gary.
Gary Kasparov and Blitz. Ornischuk, not as often at that level. He knew, did Wesley so, when he took that tepid draw, less than tepid draw yesterday, that he has a big edge when you go to rapids in terms of skill for one, but experience for another at the highest level.
Yep.
He may have an elder by something like 18 years sitting across from him, but Ornischuk has never had to play the world's best on a consistent basis to face those kind of monsters in rapid chess and work it out. And on top of which, Ornischuk these days doesn't play a lot of tournaments as well, so not in as great form. So that's why Wesley was willing to go to this day and say, I think that I can beat you, whoever you put in front of me.
But I got to hand it to Alexander Ornischuk in this game. He was so close to finding all the right moves. He found a really good string of moves and just a little bit more time. In this position, though, I think that his dreams are going to be over soon. I mean, your move, bishop h3, with e6 coming, those pawns are just too much to handle.
Bishop d1. By the way, may I just boldly point out the obvious. In the Grand Chess Tour, Rapids and Blitz, Wesley So is our Grand Chess Tour champion. I mean,
Guys.
You mentioned all of those great names, a phenomenal bevy of names. And Wesley has essentially defeated them all to win. And after, by the way, beautiful move, bishop d1 was in fact 5 minutes. 5 minutes now to, yes.
Quick bishop h7 by Alexander.
Bishop h7.
And now knight e3, protecting the pawn. H5 now hanging.
Yes.
And of course the rook on a4 is also hanging. So after rook takes a2,
which was played.
Quick e6 here.
Ooh, that really, really does hurt because now you're going after black's king. Bishop h5 on tap. Maybe
F6
this pawn goes.
work.
Maybe that pawn just rumbles all the way through.
And after takes, there's the in-between move, bishop b3, which has been played, hitting that rook on a2.
By the way, instantly. Wesley is in cruise control here, guys. I mean,
yes. Now when he takes on e6, he's going to be threatening e6, check, winning the house.
Rook e2, essentially the only move, but unfortunately for Alex, there's simply no way of this bishop on h5 is bishop on h7, apologies, is simply trapped.
Yeah, but look at this pass pawn. I mean, f
Yeah.
takes e6, and you can be untrapped all you want because that next push is going to be ugly.
Excuse
no
me.
matter what you do.
E7,
And we did have a
King h8,
King h8, e7, rook
E7.
e8, but now we can protect that
just
pawn
protect
with
the
bishop
pawn
g5.
and threaten rook f8.
We're threatening
Rook
rook f8. We're threatening
f8.
bishop f7.
That's it. That's
This
it.
is over.
This is a resigns after bishop f4 to g5 with the threat of rook f8. That's
Because if bishop g6, there's still rook f8 and bishop g8 check.
ooh.
That
Ouch.
that ends the
Ouch,
story
ouch.
after
Yes.
King h8, bishop back to f7.
This is resigns, everybody. Bishop g5.
It's
Wesley's
gotten to the stage where
precision.
any of us could win this position. Doesn't
Yeah.
take a Wesley
And-
so.
And there we have it. The precision. Take a look at once Wesley had the big time edge. It's like every move was bang, 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 and so precise. When he has a winning position, Wesley makes winning look easy. He's so efficient. Wow.
That's right. And
Very impressive.
And if Ornischuk had more time, but one of the things that Wesley did, very practical, he played these complicated moves. He couldn't possibly have calculated all the ramifications of queen takes b7 and bishop g4, but he played them having twice as much time on his clock, and that's what
huge.
downed Alex.
Yeah.
We see Sabina Feuser, the reigning women's champion, getting a hug there from Wesley's stepmom, Lotus. But Wesley will hope to join her in one more game.
And what's that in his Ziploc bag? Is that snacks? Is he snacking on more than chess pawns, Yaz?
Yeah, I think he's got a little something going on there. Recap that game for us, will you, Maurice? What impressed you most? It all happened out of a very complicated opening.
Yes, indeed. In this position, very sharp. The first thing that impresses me is Wesley said, I'm willing to play into these poison pawn lines with queen b3. He just play the most critical position. He's not backing down and looking for small edges or whatever. He said, I'm going to go right into it and see what happens. Now, Alex could have played many moves here. I say many, different type moves. Knight c5 was certainly one of them. d4 was another. Knight c6 that he played was another. You see his personality show itself. He's a classicist. He wants to have his pieces ready when the stuff hits the fan. So he decided on this move, you could have predicted of the three moves that he would play that this would be the one that just plays as classically as possible. And again, continuing classical style. No knight g5s, forget all that. Let's play classical chess. Bishop c5, get your pieces ready. Knight e3, Wesley again found the top move. But again, Wesley said, I'm going to go into greed line. This is where Yaz, you like to move d3. He said, I'm just going to go for it. You figure out the complications. I'll figure some way of making it so critical for you that you have to find all the moves. But it wasn't the best decision, as here, suddenly after this setup, knight c5, look at these wonderful moves that he found. All first-time engine moves, including knight e6. Alexander Ornischuk playing to harmonize his pieces perfectly. And here was the moment, one critical moment, we should say, in the game where c5 could have been played. He took on b2. And now, again, he had this idea of knight d4. He played queen d4, and this is the big moment. Rook b2. This sharpened the game so dramatically in this position. After this, rook takes b2 and bishop g4. If only Alex could have found queen to b6 in this position, it would have been a completely different game, completely different. Unfortunately, he messed up with this move, and after that, like you said, man, just a train that you could not slow down, Wesley. So finding all these moves, bishop d1, as you mentioned, Yaz, it was a pure demolition after that. And now up 1-0. Yaz, you said you wanted to have the black pieces in game one. What's up?
Well,